Right before we jump into this video, if you want to get my free 11 Days to Better Photography mini video course, head on over to froknowsphoto.com/11days to get started right now. Jared Polin, froknowsphoto.com, out here in front of the Philadelphia Museum of Art, or most commonly known as where Rocky ran up the stairs. Now I'm out here today to do a real-world review of the Canon EOS M5. Now this is their first mirrorless camera to have a built-in EVF, and I know a lot of professionals are curious about how this camera works, as well as amateurs who may be looking for a small camera to take around that is powerful for what they're trying to capture. Now I have a ton of different lenses that Canon sent me out to use on this review, and I'll be switching around trying to use as many as possible, but my goal is to tell the photo story with the wides, the tights, the mediums, whatever it is I can capture. That's what I'm out here to do, so let's go do it right now. So we started the day off across the street from the Philadelphia Museum of Art. Now, I used that time to try to get the wider shot so that I could show the entire art museum as well as the stairs that Rocky ran up. Some of the things that I wanted to try to capture is slowing the shutter speed down a little to see if I could get some of the cars going by. Now that would have looked better if it was nighttime and the street lights were on, but we shot this during the day and I think I got some pretty nice shots right there. Now some of the things that I noticed is that when I looked through the viewfinder, the EVF, that the picture looked fantastic through the EVF, but when I saw it on my screen, it didn't look as good. So I'll have to see how the raw files look in the computer to see which one is closer to what is reality. So primarily I'm shooting in manual mode. That's how I like to shoot. Now generally on these smaller mirrorless cameras, it's harder to find the buttons to make all of the changes of the ISO, aperture, and shutter speed, but right here in this camera on the back, there's a dedicated button for everything. That is really good to have because it makes it quicker for me to look through the camera and make the changes I need to make. So let's run down some of the specs of the Canon EOS M5. Now you have a 24.2 megapixel CMOS sensor that is APS-C size. Now that's the same as what you would find in the Canon 80D. That also means that when you put a lens on it, in order to get the 35mm equivalent, you need to multiply it by 1.6. When I crossed the street to get closer photos of the stairs, I noticed a guy selling t-shirts. Now I thought this would be a good opportunity to try to capture his images. Now when I moved over to the side, I made pretend that I was going to shoot the flags, got out the 55-200 lens, and started to photograph that guy. Now one of the things you can do if you're out there in the streets trying to get street style photos and you don't want people to think you're looking at them, you could be like, oh, I'm about to shoot pictures of the flag over there. I kind of audibly said that to try to make sure that the guy heard that so that he didn't think I was shooting his pictures, but I actually was. So I was pretty happy with the photos I got there. I was able to compose them the way that I wanted. I was able to move the focusing point the way that I wanted. And I even was able to map one of the buttons to allow me to switch from continuous focus to single focus. Keep in mind, that is a great thing to have, is the ability to go from continuous to single with one press of a button. Inside of this camera, you have a Digix 7 processor. You won't even find one of those processors in the 5D Mark IV or the 1DX Mark II. In terms of ISO, you have 100 all the way up to 25,600. That's the same that you will find in the Canon 80D. And from the real-world review of the Canon 80D, at higher ISOs, that camera handled extremely well, which means you should see similar results at higher ISOs in this camera as well. The M5 is the first mirrorless camera from Canon to have a built-in EVF. Now it has a 2.36 million EVF that I absolutely love. I love being able to preview the images there. I love to review the images there, and if I was to shoot video, I could keep my eye up to the viewfinder so it looks like I'm shooting photos, but I'm actually shooting video. That is a great feature to have. One of the things you may be wondering is, does the LCD stay on when you put the camera up to your eye? Well, no. It switches from the LCD to the EVF via a proximity sensor. Now, one of the things I did notice is that when I put my eye up to the EVF, it took a split second longer than I hoped to change from the LCD to the EVF. Now, is it that big of a deal? No. Maybe in future iterations, they can get that to go just a little bit quicker. Sometimes I like to check my angles and composition by looking through the camera while it's off. Well, in this case, you can't do that because there's no optical viewfinder because it's a mirrorless camera. So you need to turn it on in order to see your framing. It's kind of common sense. If you already have EFS or EF lenses, you can use them on this camera. You just need an adapter that Canon sells. Now, I was a little bit hesitant to use it at first because I thought maybe the autofocus would slow down, but it didn't. I threw the bigger 70-200 right on the adapter and it worked perfectly well. The autofocus seemed to be just as fast as if it was on a full frame camera. That's great that you can take the lenses you already have and simply with an adapter, use them on this camera. You will find that you have a 3.2-inch touchscreen on this camera. Now, I love touchscreens. They've gotten so much better than they were in the past, and once you go touchscreen, you kind of never go back. But you also have the ability to tilt it. Now, you can't rotate it, but you can tilt it this way, you can tilt it that way. You can also do this, boom, for selfie mode. So Canon sent me out a lot of EOS M lenses. Now, I thought I would try to go through as many as possible, but I really stuck with just 3 or 4 of them because they seem to serve the purpose. The 11-22 gave me a great wide angle and a little bit of zoom to play with. The 55-200, even though it's a kit lens, it gives me a ton of reach. It's light and it's easy to carry around. And I absolutely love the 28mm macro. With some of the EOS M lenses, you need to unlock them before you can even start to use the functions of the camera. I like the ability to just turn it and go whenever I want. So I don't like the fact that you have to unlock them and then relock them when you stop shooting. Before I ran up the stairs, I thought I would go see the Rocky statue and get some photos. Now, it used to be at the top of the stairs, but they moved it off to the side. Now, I thought that would be a great place to get some selfie pictures with the selfie mode. And also, there was a kid who ran up to the statue and put his hands up in the air, and I tried to capture that the best way that I could, but I had the 55-200mm lens on there, and I wasn't able to move quick enough without people being in my way to get the best shot possible. I tried to get some details of Rocky to get his hands up in the air to try to get some of his portraits, but one of the things I noticed with the 55-200 was that it was harder to blow out the background and get separation. The photos took on more of a snapshot look opposed to a photographic look, which would have allowed me to separate the subject from the background, and that's why I threw on one of the longer lenses, one of the faster 2.8 pieces of glass, to allow me to get that separation that I was looking for. Inside the camera, you do have some image stabilization, but keep in mind that it's digital. Now, it is a 5-axis, so it comes in handy when you're shooting video. Just remember, it's gonna crop it just a little bit, but you're gonna be thankful that you have that in-camera image stabilization. Keep in mind, if you have an IS lens, it works in tandem with the digital 5-axis image stabilization. If you ever find yourself in Philadelphia, be sure to head over to the art museum so you can run up the stairs just like Rocky did. Now, I thought that that would be a good opportunity to run up the stairs in selfie mode shooting video. The dual pixel AF worked extremely well. The in-camera image stabilization worked extremely well. The audio, on the other hand, has a lot of wind interference that you could hear, but a lot depends on if you're in a windy situation or not to determine how good the audio is going to be. All right, we're testing out the vloggy style option with this camera. One of the things you could do is plug in an external microphone that has a windscreen on it, and that way you could get better audio. but with the audio built in, you kind of want to use that, so you want to make sure it's not too windy out or your audio is not going to sound great. Once you get to the top of the stairs, be sure to look away from the art museum because you get one of the best views of Philadelphia. You look all the way down the parkway, which is lined by all of the country's flags, all the way down to City Hall. It's a great place to get some photos. Being that I like to shoot in manual, how easy is it to change your shutter speed, your ISO, and your aperture? Well, Canon did a good job putting the buttons right where they need to be to allow me to change them all. You can simply change the aperture by moving your thumb around the little dial on the back. You can change your shutter speed by changing the front dial with your finger, and the ISO is placed in a place that is simple and easy to get to, so that's a good job by Canon. There's a lot of buttons on this camera, and not many of them are mappable. I would like the ability to map all the buttons to be whatever I want them to be. That's one of the things that you may have an issue with that I personally had a little bit of an issue with. What I absolutely love is how quickly I can move the focus points to where I want just by touching the screen when my face is up against the viewfinder. I sit here, I look at the viewfinder, I move, well, as long as my nose isn't in the way, I can make the focus point go wherever I want, just quickly dragging it across the screen. That's awesome. Now, this takes some getting used to. If you have a bigger nose like me, look, it's a little on the bigger side, that could change the focusing point as well. Now, in the menu system, you could have it be active on the entire LCD. You could have it on the top, the bottom, the left, the right. Now, I wish they had a smaller little thumb pad to the right that I could control the focus points with, but they didn't. Now, if you don't want to use the touch focus, you could use the D-pad to move everything around. Now, I personally think it's better to use the Touch AF. I would be very interested to see this in a DSLR in the future, but not on the screen itself, but on a small touch-sensitive pad. That would be awesome to use. So I think I got a bunch of good photos shooting down the parkway, but don't forget, there's a lot of details in the environments you're in. There is a plaque where Rocky stood and did his dancing and jumping around. That can make for a great photo. So I shot a photo straight down, but I also got down at a super low angle to get an interesting shot where the Rocky feet were in focus, but the rest of the city was out of focus, but still looked great in the background. So don't forget to look around and get those detailed shots. Some people may be upset to find that this camera doesn't have weather sealing, but you have to remember, in a sub-$1,000 camera, you're not going to have everything, and I don't think that is a deal breaker in this case. But how does it feel in the hands? Well, in my hands, it feels pretty good. They've done a great job designing the ergonomics so that your thumb goes in the right place, so it just feels good in your hands, and in the front, you have a nice, large grip. Now, keep in mind, if you have larger hands, it may be harder to hold on to a camera like this, but if you have smaller hands or just regular size hands, this camera should fit perfectly fine in your hands. So I made sure to get a couple more detailed shots of the art museum before walking across the street to Paynes Park. Now, Paynes Park is a skate park, and I was hoping to find a bunch of people over there to get some cool photos, and that's exactly what happened. This one kid came over and said, "Hey, can you take a couple of pictures of me trying to land some tricks?" And that's exactly what I did. He did a couple of passes. I think I got some great wide-angle shots that looked really good. One of the questions I have for Canon is why, when I'm in continuous focus, does it beep? I found it a little hard when I was shooting the skateboarder to know if I was actually continuously focusing him until I saw the photos, and I was. So how many frames a second can you shoot? Well, if you lock your focus in, you can get 9 frames a second. If you're doing continuous focus, you can get 7, and you can get up to 20 RAW files before you fill the buffer. One of the things that you notice when you shoot with a DSLR and you shoot multiple frames is that every time you take a picture, there's a little bit of blackout in the viewfinder. Well, being that this is a mirrorless camera, you don't see any blackout in the viewfinder, which means when you're shooting multiple frames in a row, you have the ability to continue to track your subject and keep them with the best composition. So he let me do some portraits. I put the 50mm 1.2 onto the adapter and got some incredible sharp images. So if you like to shoot manual focus, you'll be happy to know that there is a focus peaking option inside of this camera. That's going to help you pull focus when you're shooting video and also help you when you're shooting stills with manual focus. Let me cut in here to ask you a quick question. How do you organize your gear? Do you know how much gear you have and what it's worth? Well, if not, check out my new app called My Gear Vault. It's the best way to input, organize, and protect your gear, and it's absolutely free. Head on over to mygearvault.com or the Apple App Store. Just look for My Gear Vault. It's coming soon for Android. Now let's get back to the real-world review. Being that I'm a world-famous skater, and by world-famous skater I mean not at all, I thought it would be great to do some selfie mode and do some extreme walking, and that's exactly what I did.
I'm gonna grind this right here with my feet. We're gonna do a semi-size left. No, I'm not. All right, you ready? Let's do some extreme vlogging. That's right. Even in tight jeans, into the kickback. I did it. That's right. Did you see that? Nailed it.
One of my favorite features that Canon offers in many of its newer cameras is dual pixel AF. I absolutely love that. When I was doing video in selfie mode, I could see the little box following my head around. Whether I went this way or I went that way, it always tracked me. Dual pixel AF is one of the best features for shooting video. Speaking of video, this camera does not shoot in 4K. It does 1080 up to 60 frames a second, and unlike the 80D, it does not shoot in all-I. All-I is a great function that's going to give you better quality video, a better bit rate. Now that is not always a deal breaker if you're just somebody who's a consumer looking to get basic video. But if you're looking to get better video, you may want to look at something like the 80D that has the all-I function. Now this camera has a jack to allow you to put in an external microphone, which is great, but it doesn't have a headphone jack, so you can't monitor the audio.
So do you know what this selfie mode is good for? Hair pics.
To check to see if my hair's all right. Boom. That's right, because I can use that flippy out screen. Oh, look at
that. You see that knot of hair?
Woo. Where'd that come from? One of the things I noticed when shooting video in selfie mode is that when the camera is turned facing you, it's not easy to know which button to hit to record video. So I went ahead and changed it to the MFN button, which is right here in the front, so I can simply hold the camera out like this, hit this button, and hit record. But when you do that, I'm also possibly gonna hit other buttons here, and in one of the cases, I cut the recording off before I wanted to finish. So just be careful that you don't hit other buttons and end your recording before you wanted to. Before leaving Paynes Park, I threw the macro lens onto the camera and I found Blake again and asked if I could do some macro shots. He said, "Hey, why don't you shoot my eye?" So that's exactly what I tried to do. I used the macro lens with the light that's built in to try to get some photos, and it gave me this interesting ring light, and I thought it would be interesting to turn that off to see how the shots looked. I think they looked pretty good. So So after I photographed Blake's eye, I wanted to shoot some of the skateboard, his hands on the skateboard, so I snapped off a few shots and I think I got some really nice images. One of the biggest concerns with mirrorless cameras is battery life. So how was the battery life out here shooting in Philly? Well, I got 490 photos as well as a bunch of videos before I changed the battery, so I say that's pretty good. As a recommendation, I suggest you always carry an extra battery with you, especially when you travel, because the last thing you want to do is run out of juice while you still have great photos to be taken. So I had a great day shooting around Philly using the Canon EOS M5, but the only way to determine how good this camera is to get the RAW files back to the loft and do some editing, so that's exactly what I'm going to do right now. So here we are back at the loft to analyze the photos from the EOS M5, and I want to remind you that you can download all the full res images over on the website as well as the exported RAW files. You can play with them yourself. Go ahead and hit the I button that's back up over my head to see all of the different links that I've put into this video. Now let's take a look at the first image. So here we have it. I absolutely love this image. I love the fact that I used the 11 to 22 millimeter lens, which is a little bit wider. So a recommendation is if you pick up this body, look for the wider lenses, because if you just get the 18 to 50 kit or the 18 to 150, it may not give you the same, well, it's not going to give you the same angle as an 11 millimeter. When you travel, that 11 millimeter is going to come in handy. But I love the colors, the tones, the clarity. I was pretty happy with at 5.6. Everything looks nice and sharp. I don't see a lot of issues around this image. The colors look good, the tones look good, the sharpness looks good. Now let me show you something. This is where it started. This is the RAW file straight out of the camera. Now what you need to remember is when you shoot RAW, you're not saving any of the JPEG settings right into the file. Only when you shoot JPEGs do the picture styles actually get baked into the file. But when you shoot RAW, you have to go in and process each file. That's what I did right here, and you can see how much better it looks with all of the processing. This is also an image that I printed out. Now, I printed this out 17 by 22 on the Canon Pro 1000 printer, and you gotta know that pictures shouldn't just live in your computer. If you wanna really analyze it, print it out, and you will see the difference. I love how the print looks. It's really good quality, and I'm happy so far with the images. Now let's move on to the next one. Gonna get here in library mode. Just a little closer. Love the sky, love the tones. Zoomed in a little bit, so I went from 12 millimeters on this one and zoomed in to 22 on this one. Kept the angles, everything looks good. Black and white, guy skating by me here. Very happy with how that worked out. Now we've got the 55 to 200 millimeter lens that I threw on here that Canon has for the EOS M. Now, it's sharp enough. One of the things I noticed with this camera is that with those EFM lenses, I may be slightly off from where I'm used to being with the higher end cameras. But keep in mind, this is a consumer camera, and that most people using it would never know the difference between something that is off by this much focus if it's off at all. Remember that zooming in 1:1, I'm seeing a little bit of an imperfection, but it's still perfectly fine for the consumers of the world. We'll talk about pros in just a minute. So keeping on moving here. So black and white. The black and white looks perfectly fine to me. I like to do the processing like this so that you can get some nice tones. That looks much sharper, and that's also still using the 55 to 200. So it's a little bit hit and miss sometimes depending on where you're putting the focus point. But for the most part, I was very happy with the focus I was able to get throughout the entire shoot. Now, this is one of my favorite shots, not because I think it's a great photo or anything, but because I put on the Canon adapter to allow me to use the EF lenses. Now, a lot of people know, you hear them talk about the Sony cameras and being able to adapt Nikon and Canon lenses to the Sony cameras. Now there's issues. You lose metering sometimes. You don't have as good of focusing a lot of times. In this case, on the EOS M5, Canon has a native adapter that you put on it. You can put your EF lenses right on it and shoot it as if it was on the camera like any other camera. It just worked. I was so amazed to put the adapter on, put the lens on, start shooting right away without even thinking about it. I have my metering, I have my focus, and I was able to put on a better piece of glass with the 70-200 2.8 version 1 and get this photo from a distance. Remember, multiply all lenses by 1.6 to get the 35mm equivalent, but when you can throw on your EF lenses, that's going to make a major difference on this camera. So moving on to the next one, just a super low angle using the 11-22. I actually really like that lens. That's why I stuck with it for most of the shoot, more so than the basic kit. So keep in mind, this is a $1,000 body without a lens. If you want to add a lens, the basic kit lens goes for $99 more, or you could pick up the 18-150 and you're spending a lot more money. But for most people who are traveling, they may just want one lens to rule them all when it comes to this consumer end camera. But for the pros out there, you could throw this in the bag, get the quality of what you would get from a Canon 80D because it's the same sensor, and be very happy with it. But again, we'll talk more about that later. Super low angle, love a shot like this. Broke out the 55-200 to shoot all the way down the parkway to get a shot along those lines. Did a creative crop in this case when I was on top of the stairs, saw this bike guy going by, and quickly used my thumb on the back of the LCD screen to move my focus point all the way to the right where I wanted it. I love the ability to move my finger across the screen to move the focus points. So that worked out well. So this is selfie mode. Now selfie mode, well, it's selfie mode. You flip the screen out, you do this to it, and you can then hold it out and take pictures with it because you can frame yourself up. Now, how does it work for video? You saw some of the videos already that I took, and it works very well because of the dual pixel AF. It's going to track you very well. It's going to capture you. Basically, what you see is what you get because you have the ability to flip the LCD screen down. And on the flip side, you heard a lot of wind noise with the audio. Now, to be fair to the camera, we went out on a super windy day, and that's why the noise was so prevalent with the wind. There are some windscreens that you could rig yourself and glue to the top if you really wanted to do that. That would help out. That's if you're looking for this camera to be a straight up vloggy camera, or you could throw in an external mic and somehow attach it to it. Just make sure it doesn't protrude too much out the front that it gets in the way of your video. Now, speaking of the camera, why don't we throw a quick size comparison there? This is the Nikon D3300, one of their consumer level cameras. You can see the difference in size already. The EOS M5 is much smaller than this, and I think it's going to give you better quality than this, but this is just meant to give you a size comparison. So moving back to the computer, I went ahead and did a sequence of 20 shots in a row to fill the buffer and to try to see how the focus tracking did. So you can see 20 shots in a row. Now I believe it nailed the focus right here, or nope, it didn't nail the focus there. It didn't nail the focus there. It got much better right there. And I'm using the 70-200 2.8 shooting at 1/1000th of a second. So I gave it plenty of shutter speed to freeze the action. It's just that these oh, that one's much better. So you see that. It did track the guy. It did track him the whole way. It missed focus on a bunch of them, but it hits on certain, so you have some of them to use. Let me explain this real quick. Sometimes with mirrorless cameras, you don't have the ability to track as well as the DSLRs that have been around for much longer. I find with a DSLR, you're able to get a much tighter focus when you're tracking a subject. But to be fair, again, one of the hardest subjects to track for a camera is the one coming directly at the camera. Now let me show you what's going on in the next couple of shots. We have the guy skateboarding. Now talk about great focus. It tracked him as he came in off this wall over here, and it tracked him the entire way and kept them in focus. And you can see that it nailed it right here. I was using the 11-22 again, getting a low angle, and it nailed it. So it depends on what you're doing. It's great with tracking more laterally than it is with something coming right at you. Like the conversions of black and whites, happy with the actions I got, happy with how many frames a second I was able to shoot. So moving on to the next one, we have a portrait of Blake, who just so happened to be out at the park and asked to have his picture taken, which is all I could ever want, is somebody to want their picture to be taken, especially the skateboarder. I threw on the 50mm 1.2 lens onto this camera and got this tack sharp shot. This is great. I moved the focus point right to his eye where it needed to be, and boom, it's as sharp as can be. Here's the black and white version, and this is where I'll talk about the pro aspect. Putting great glass onto just about any camera is going to help you get better results. Of course, you still need to know how to control your camera, the exposure triangle, and all of that to help you get better images. But if you're a pro looking for a camera to take around and still use your better glass because you want a smaller camera that's lighter, of course, when you put on bigger glass, it's not going to be as light, but this camera handles very well. It's like an 80D, but in a much smaller body that's going to allow you to get really good shots if you're a professional looking for that. But you have to keep in mind it's designed and meant for the consumer market who wants a smaller camera that's better than their iPhone or whatever phone they're using. They want to get better results, and this is going to do that for them even if they just take pictures in auto. But if you're a pro, this could be a nice option. Instead of buying something from Sony, because you already have the lenses, you just get the adapter, you throw it in your bag, and you have a fun little camera to get some nice video and nice photos with. So moving on, we've got this macro shot. They have this super cool lens that they offer that has the super macro mode, but it also has an LED light built into it. You can see what's going on when you get super close with super macro to the eyeball. You can see the light in there. Now, if I wasn't shooting something reflective, that would put a little more light onto the subject, and it would give you a great shot. I'm happy with this. Also printed this out. That looked very good. I just didn't like the ring light in the eye, so I turned it off. Went to 4000 ISO at f7.1. This is to show you how does the ISO handle. It looks pretty good here. Remember, print something out like this, and you won't even notice the noise or the grain after the fact, but pixel peep in the computer, and you will. One more, pushed it even further. We went to 10,000 ISO, and there's not much of a difference in the quality between 4,000 and 10,000. You do lose a little bit of color information as the ISO goes up, but at 10,000 ISO, of course, we were outside. It did work well, but this is a sample image so you can see how it works at higher ISOs and test out the grain. So that's about it. I'm very happy with how this camera handled. I like the fact that this was the first time I ever shot anything with this camera, and I was able to come back with great keeper shots. I love the EVF. I love being able to slide my finger across the LCD to move the focus points wherever I want them to be. I love the fact that I can get an adapter and put the pro level lenses on this camera and use them natively without having to worry about losing focus speed or losing any quality. I absolutely love that. So at the end of the day, if you're a consumer who's looking to get better pictures than what your point and shoot does or what your cell phone does, this is a very good option. You're not going to be as discerning as a professional, so if you leave it in full auto, you get the kit lens, you're probably gonna get okay results that you're happy with compared to your cell phones. If you're a professional, I just said this a little earlier, pick one up for $1,000. Get the adapter for $199. Throw it in the bag. Use it for your walk-around camera for street photography because it's smaller. Put on the good glass, you're gonna be happy with the results. And that's where I'll leave it, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget you can download the full-res exported JPEGs as well as sample DNG files over on the website, Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com. See ya.